If you eat, you eat. If you talk, you talk. If you sleep, you sleep. If you make a movement, you make a movement. This is the way of life. Nowadays, the problem is you talk, you think about eating. You are eating, you think about sleeping. You are sleeping, you think about moving. You are moving, you think about reading. Okay? So for me, it's not, I don't want to be out of the body. The thing is, I don't want to be unaligned. This is what I don't want to be. Everything about me, my emphasis is I want it to be aligned. What I feel is what I say, is what I think, is what I do, is what I act upon. It's one way. It's not two options.
All right, welcome to next installment your next installment of Behind Greatness by Inspire. It's Luciano here as your host. Before we get into this next conversation, I want to remind the listener, new or veteran, please do visit our website. Check out the episodes, our library of episodes that we've been building in the last 3 years. Or, of course, go and visit your podcast player. We're on every major podcast player and minor, for that matter. So wherever you get your podcasts, you can find them. And when you get the chance, it'd be great if you just rate us, share with your family and friends, all the nice stuff. We are a registered charity, as our regular listeners know. So if you're so inclined to help us out, we are a volunteer organization. We all run our own businesses. The team that is here at Behind Greatness, and this is something that we do because we want to, because we always like asking questions, and so we use this platform to do just that. And we, as our regular listener knows, we have people on from around the world who have been asking their own questions. And so these are the people we'd like to link up with. Today will be no different. We are joined today, and I'm going to call him Shifu in this conversation. His name is Shi Heng Yi. He's Master Shi Heng Yi. He belongs to the 35th generation of Shaolin masters and is the headmaster of the Shaolin Temple Europe. In this function, he takes over the physical as well as the mental training and development of the novices, disciples, and master students of the monastery in Otterberg, Germany, which is where he's joining us from now. For more than 30 years, Master Shi Heng Yi has been involved in the Shaolin arts and studies of human potential. In his first appearance at the TEDx Vitosha event in 2020, he shared his profound insights on the 5 hindrances of self-mastery, which is something I think we're going to be talking about here. After graduating from several academic qualifications, Master Shi Heng Yi has been involved in sustainable development and spreading of the Shaolin culture, wisdom, and way of life. His goal and endeavor is not only to explain and convey theoretical principles in a comprehensible way, but above all, to make this knowledge tangible in a practical and everyday way to share the precious teachings to a wider audience. Shifu, thank you for coming on.
Luciano, thank you very much for that introduction.
Yeah, no worries. We're excited to have you on. We had a chat about, I guess, a month ago, maybe a little bit less. And you were traveling, so I didn't see you in your traditional monasteric garb. You were dressed in, because you were in Russia, right? Is that right? You were in Moscow?
That time it was Russia, exactly.
Yeah. Yes. You were just like a regular guy with a parka on.
I am still, in all of these years, even if people know me publicly, especially on the social media, maybe differently, wearing my robe, wearing the uniform, but underneath it, I'm still considering myself being a very normal guy. It's just that my lifestyle or the things that I'm spending my time with, this might be a little bit different than what you would regard an average person would follow up on.
just to get us started quickly for a brief context, what I did mention in your in the bio is, and we'll put this in the show notes. Listeners can visit you at shaolintemple.eu, and your temple is one of few or only in Europe. Can you bring us through that just for a moment?
It has ever since this name of Shaolin also started to spread within Europe, there is one main emphasis why actually from China the doors have been opened, meaning the doors have been opened for teachers, masters, disciples to go out in the world in order to know more about what this Shaolin culture is about. And now almost 22 or 23 years later, after the doors were opened, there are several ways how you can get in contact with the Shaolin teachings. You have Shaolin centers, you have different Shaolin martial arts schools, and at the same time, you also find a few places that are taking it a little bit to another understanding, meaning because in my personal life, I valued the Shaolin teaching so much, I decided why not spend 24 hours, 24/7 all the time with this type of teaching. And this is why our organization, meaning the Shaolin Temple Europe, we started to set up our organization in such a way that you are having a monastic lifestyle from morning till evening, 24/7. And this is what we are regarding as the closest possible to how you actually find this tradition also coming from China. And as far as I know, throughout this whole world, there are a few of these type of places that are fully engaged in this 24/7, the whole year monastic way of life. But the majority, of course, if you want to get in contact with the Shaolin martial arts, these are Shaolin schools, martial arts schools, or meanwhile, they are called Shaolin cultural centers.
Okay, that was important for us to mention at the beginning, because this is as you had stressed to me before. You're not a monk; you are a kung fu master in the Shaolin tradition. But the difference is, sorry to repeat here, but the difference is that you live a monastic life at 24/7. So that's what makes this unique in what you're doing in Europe. Okay, so the last time we didn't chat too much about kung fu, other than how it is a tool for you in your life. I thought the conversation, or at least what you were imparting to me, was fascinating. So why don't we get right into it? You told me thinking always separates. What does that mean?
In the way how I discovered it for myself, observed the things around me. Sometimes when we do meditative practices, when we do our kung fu training, of course, in the very beginning, when you are learning a new movement, first of all, your eyes are watching towards, let's say, your teacher, you're watching towards the instructor, meaning you're trying to get the information of what you see outside from yourself, to get it, first of all, to, in a way, comprehend how do you need to coordinate, and afterwards give the instruction to your body area to copy that movement right now. And this very initial step now also means that your awareness somehow, first of all, is oriented outwards, and afterwards, after getting the information in, you are then starting to process. So it still means that all of your awareness is still not 100% of, with your own potential, with your own capacity. So that means the very first step of learning anything, of course, it involves thinking. It involves observing, getting the information in, and then afterwards processing it with the body. But we want to actually skip this part, let's say, as quick as possible until something is coming into place that people maybe heard about already. when the movement has become part of your being. It has become part of your flesh and the blood. So what does it mean when a movement has become part of yourself? It's not separated anymore. It's not that you are thinking about the movement and afterwards doing the movement. You have to become the movement. You have to become what you are doing. And that means already here you see, we want to decrease all these types of separation that normally can just happen if you are still staying with something and think too much about it. And this is the same way also like just right now, talking with you. Of course, I can, let's say, think before I talk. But then it's still, our conversation is still in a way separated, I would say. So therefore, it's just like my complete focus right now is with you. And so between what I say, what I mean, what my intention is, it just is, let's say like this. Okay. And this is the whole purpose why we have so many different entrances or so many different practices. Yeah. Known as meditative practices, known as mind exercising practices in order to bring unity back into your life.
So when we talked about the Buddhism that you practice, you said there's a kind of Buddhism that is scholastic, learning from scriptures. And then there is another kind of Buddhist learning where you need to do something, the Chan Buddhism. And this is what you practice. And the way you described it to me, because I'm a neophyte, like, what do I know? You said, this is based on meditation, growing in the moment through meditative practices. I think I understand what that means, but I might not. There's a little bit of doubt. Growing in the moment, what is meant by that, in the moment?
I'm not really sure, for example, if the audience right now that is listening to this podcast, if anybody is already, has already informed themselves about what, for example, Buddhism is. So therefore, I think I need to make a really, really quick introduction just to have a really basic understanding. What is it all about? Why are we also like Shaolin is knowing for the martial arts, knowing to practice the body in quite an extensive way, but what all of this has to do now with Buddhism at the end. Okay. Let's take the religious aspect of Buddhism, or just forget about this word Buddhism. So when you start walking through this lifetime, every human being is going to encounter different moments, different situations that are going to trigger something inside of the human being that most of us would regard as unpleasant. It doesn't feel unpleasant. It evokes something inside of you that is just not uncomfortable. Okay. So to make it super simple right now, this is already the beginning where we are saying, walking through this lifetime, you will encounter suffering. Suffering in many, many different variations. Even going to the doctor, going to the dentist, having a surgery, hitting your knee against something. This is a type of suffering. When you're walking down the street and you are dropping something and then it gets broken. Also, this is a type of suffering occurring in your lifetime. This type of suffering is especially hard when it now comes to the loss of beings. So meaning if you had a very close relationship to an animal, if you had a very close relationship to your parents or to a beloved one, and then this person passes away, there is also the suffering of this loss. So the bottom line for all human beings is, when we are getting born and start walking through this lifetime, we are going to encounter suffering. Now, on the one side, now you could say, yes, this is the normal way of life, so there's no way around it. But now comes the twist in that whole story. Now, there is a legend, a saying, a story about a person that was just like you and me, a normal human being. He had everything in his lifetime, it is said, because he was the son of a king, meaning he was a prince. So he was surrounded by a kingdom, had financial security, he had all the beauty that you can afford when having the financial possibilities, but still, with all of these being around, there was still something inside this person that one day made him leave these walls of comfort. Because maybe he just felt this cannot be it. So when he left his kingdom, there are so-called 4 encounters that made him quite drastically change the way of how he was from that moment on walking through the rest of this lifetime. Number 1 encounter was, he realized that in this world it's existing sickness. People in this world, no matter who, no matter where, we are getting sick, or let's say our body is getting sick. Second encounter, we are getting old, aging. Third one is, after aging, after sickness, eventually our body starts to, let's say, pass away or simply return back to where it comes from, meaning from the earth. So we are also dying. But now comes the 4th encounter, and that is now an important one. That was the moment when Prince Siddhartha Gautama, after seeing all this suffering in the world, he encountered one person who was a monk, and this monk, from the energy that he was just expressing, from the charisma that he had, he just felt like such a peaceful and stable person, seeming like despite all the suffering that is existing in this world, still all the suffering couldn't get close to that monk that he met. And this was the beginning now, where this Prince Siddhartha Gautama started to dedicate his lifetime searching to the answer. Is there a way how to end the suffering of walking in this world? So, and this is what nowadays, this path is what nowadays is known as the Buddhist teachings. Okay? So one way of how can you learn more about these Buddhist teachings is by studying, by reading all the scriptures that, for example, until the 21st century right now, were still delivered from the past until today. So you can read all the presentations, you can read all the deliveries from the former students of the Buddha. This is one way of how to start understanding the mindset in order to finish the suffering. But now comes the second, let's say, stage of evolvement. The second stage is right now that another great teacher, and this is the one who is very, very close related right now to the Shaolin tradition, and that is the prince with the name Bodhidharma. He came from India to China, and I make it really, really quick, so people who are more interested, they will find plenty of information. But this Bodhidharma, he said, you're not going to find the truth by studying scriptures. You're not going to find the answer to your questions by reading about them or by watching them on the screen. This is not where the answers are going to appear. He said, if there is a truth that can be understood in our lifetime, it must be a truth that is understandable just right now, regardless of what you are doing. So his emphasis was, we need to find the state of being free of suffering in the here and now, in the moment. And in the moment also meaning right now that it is based on regardless of what you are doing. And his suggestion therefore was to experience the states of being free of suffering. One way to cultivate this are the so-called meditative practices. Yeah. And these meditative practices literally put you simply in the here and now. Yeah. Being in the past too much, thinking about what happened to you last year, how people insulted you last year, what you lost last year. So that means right now, the two of us talking, but my mind being in the past is one way how I can at the moment suffer. But the fact is, but it happened last year. It happened last year, but right now you're still suffering. Why? Because your mind is in the past. Okay. Now we don't know what the future is going to bring. I don't know what this year and how this year is going to evolve, in which countries and regions in this world the next war is going to break out. So of course, in a way, I could be worried already about, what's going to happen next week, and what will I do when they come into my country? So at the same time, you can recall the sufferings also by spending too much time dwelling in or jumping into the future. So being in the past, being in the future, both of them are already sources where you're going to find suffering.
The suffering is the separation from the self.
Depending on the understanding of what you just said, but yes, it fits what you just said. It's exactly this. As long as there is separation existing, separation from the present to the past, from the present to the future, from you to your surroundings, from good and bad, from having and losing, from living and dying. So the more your mind is based on either this or that, so the more you see this separation, the higher the chances are, if you cannot find a way how to unite them, then it is automatically related to suffering. Okay? And so there's only one way how to reduce it, at least personally for everyone. Everything that you can observe in your lifetime, that you can observe from the moment you wake up in the morning, everything you are regarding as separated, figure out a way how to find the proper perspective and unite them. See that everything belongs together, regardless of if you like or dislike, because this is also separation, liking or disliking.
You were, and not to talk too much about the past, but I think this is good context too, because in a sense you played the role of that prince. I'm saying this for the listener as well. You started Kung Fu at age 4, and what you told me is that for you it was sleeping, training, eating, learning until you were 18. You were super focused on Kung Fu, but you would hear from your friends about partying and girlfriends and all that sort of stuff. And with a close friend of yours who was Romanian, you left Germany because you were born and grew up in Germany. I forgot to say that. You left Germany, you went to Romania for university, but I'm going to assume to make your parents happy, because your parents of Vietnamese origin who were refugees wanted you to be successful and wanted you to be economically independent. You got a couple of degrees, including an MBA. So you did that in your 20s. And what you said is when you were at 18, you had a lot of internal conflicts. So right at the start of this small journey in your 20s, you said you were like a tiger in a cage. So we can all infer whatever we want to infer from that. But that is a stage that I would argue most people go through consciously or subconsciously. That there is a restlessness in the human condition that has people explore and do things that probably they otherwise wouldn't, or to do things because they haven't done it before. Listening to you in the last few minutes, that exploration, because I listened to one of your TEDx talks, and you talked about the 5 hindrances: sensual desire, ill will, dullness, restlessness, and skeptical doubt. Those are 5. I mean, I just listened to it this morning, but I've been thinking about it all morning before we got on. Those are kind of those are 5 categories of distractions for me that I'm becoming more and more conscious about separating from in my everyday. Those hindrances, you have to live those hindrances to understand perhaps what unity would be for you, right? I mean, you need that life experience first.
Meanwhile, I gave so many different interviews and podcasts. So that's why actually a few months or almost 1 year back, I was actually deciding, okay, I need to be quiet. I need to be more quiet and not spread too much more. But I make it now even more simple because I think it will give a really good understanding of how meanwhile I see the things. So it is absolutely normal that everybody who I think gets born into this world has an urge to grow. So on the one side, there is like a natural biological growth that is going hand in hand with being born into this world. That's why now we are all getting older. Our mass body-wise is increasing. So there is one type of growth physical-wise. But more importantly, there is also that very deep-rooted wish. Either it comes from your heart, or it might come from your mind as well, or it might come from your soul. It doesn't matter how you name it, but I think there is something very, very innate inside of us that wants to expand as well, that wants to elevate itself during this lifetime. Okay, so now the question is the elevation. This elevation can mean you want to elevate financially. So it's possible in this world. You can dedicate your lifetime if your emphasis is you want to elevate your financial status. At the same time, you can also elevate in terms of influence, meaning elevate in terms of power that you have. Power that you have over other people, power that you have over other countries, power that you have in terms of how can you adjust your surroundings according to what you would like to do. So an elevation of influence, an elevation of power. There are many, many different ways how you can elevate yourself in this world. But many and the majority of these things that are known to humankind right now, how we are able to elevate ourselves, all of them carry one problem. And the problem is that in the moment where you are elevating financially, where you are elevating influential-wise or power-wise or manipulative-wise, all of these elevation stages, they all go on the cost of someone. They always go, so your elevation is because somebody else is suffering. Let's make it like this.
Sure.
Okay?
Sure.
There is only one type of elevation which doesn't have it. And this is the elevation when you are focusing your lifetime in making you elevate as a human that has a heart. A human that has a heart with a loving nature towards the world you are living in. Because when you are elevating yourself in this type of way, there is no downside to it. Because your elevation in terms of spreading, let's say some people call it love, but this type of elevation will have as a result that you are starting to generate compassion. The compassion that your elevation is something you wish for all other beings in this world to experience as well. Okay, so that is it. That's the bottom line after my 30 years of making Kung Fu, making all these thousands of talks. This is the bottom line. Yeah. Everyone in this world can figure out for him, herself, in what do you want to invest your lifetime in. But there is only one thing that eventually, on a large scale, does not have a downside, because there is no separation involved into this type of growth. And this is the one when you are focusing on building up your character, building up your loving heart, building up the understanding for the people around you. So you are including your life, your perspective of life is based on inclusiveness. That's what it is.
I find it fascinating to hear this from somebody who spends a lot of time in a contemplative practice on their own, for their own, to understand that compassion is number one. Because compassion, you can't be compassionate to anyone if you're the only one on the planet. You need to be connected with others. So to feel the connection with others at the core is what you say, to be compassionate towards everybody else as the goal of your existence. You need to spend time by yourself.
It is one way of practice. Let's say like this. So this idea, why nowadays do different places like monasteries, like ashrams, why do these places exist? Because, of course, there are certain frameworks. Framework meaning you are setting up a certain environment. And in this environment, it just makes it easier to cultivate something specific, let's say. Yeah, so that means if you want to practice to become more focused, let's say like this, maybe it's really not the best way to directly try and go to Main Square in New York and try to make your meditative practices there. It's not the right surrounding. It's not the right environment to cultivate it. Later, when you are advanced, then it shouldn't matter anymore. But for the beginning, to really develop something, it is very helpful to have the proper framework. And this is what a monastery, an ashram, retreat places, being calm, being isolated a little bit for yourself. This is where it helps in the beginning.
So let's explore this a little bit more, because because these are hard-hitting messages to begin with. So I want to add to them, not obviously dilute them by this repetition. But at the beginning, we talked about about thoughts. Let's go back to that a little bit, because you were throwing out some great wisdom in the last talk as well. And you said about thoughts, it's easy to recognize that thoughts are coming for you, but you are not your thoughts. It's a very action-oriented thing that you said there, because the thoughts are coming for you. Like thoughts have an intention of their own That's what I feel like what those words mean. What does it mean that thoughts are coming for you and they're coming to you? Where are they coming from?
There are some questions. Maybe there is no answer to it. One of them might really be, where are they coming from? Yeah, and I just have to tell you, meanwhile, I would say, I don't know. The only thing I realize is that I can be in two different states of the mind. I can be continuously, let's say, being mind-based, and whatever comes on my mind, this is what I am acting upon. Whatever comes to my mind, I'm going to act on it. So just right now, if I feel like, oh, I'm hungry, so then I just like follow up on that thought. I'm hungry, so that means I have to stand up. I walk somewhere, grab something to eat, come back here, eat. But another way, another state of the mind is simply that right now, for example, I'm talking with you. And of course, I can observe myself how maybe sometimes thoughts are popping up. The difference right now is that I am, first of all, not directly identifying with any of them. I know they have popped up, but they just have no relevance at the moment for the fact of that I'm speaking with you. This is like at the moment what matters more to me than to eat or to drink something. But because I can see the thoughts popping up, this is why I can decide to not identify myself with it, because it has just come to my attention. This thought has only come to my attention, but that's it. Just because something comes to your attention doesn't mean you have to act upon it.
Doesn't mean you have to pay towards that attention.
Yes. So one thing is to hold on to the thought. This is already the first thing that many people sometimes do. A thought comes up and you actively actually hold on to it. The second, I call it mistake. Yeah, it's not the proper word, but the second trap you can do is, after grabbing it, you invest even more attention to what you have grabbed there, which means now you're starting to fuel this thought. You're giving energy. You're giving awareness to this one thought. And the more this energy is now flowing into that type of thought, well, the more it's going to carry you away. But the bottom line of living this life is that from morning till evening, we all have thoughts, but the message is 90% of all the thoughts are unnecessary. They don't have a relevance for something that you really want to do when you wake up. If I were to talk with you right now, I have set my mind. I'm going to be concentrated. We have this conversation, and all the thoughts that pop up in between, it's irrelevant. So I can see them coming and I can see them passing. And afterwards, when we have finished this conversation and any of these thoughts starts to pop up again, then I have still time now to decide, do I want now to follow up on any of the thoughts or not? So that means suddenly you have it's like you have control. You have control over your 24-hour day.
We're going to have on the podcast an astrophysicist. He's retired, and his name is Rudy Shield. And we've had numerous discussions, and one of them was around black holes, because he's an expert on black holes. And there's an idea, I'm not a physicist, so what do I know? But the idea that black holes store all the thoughts of the universe, which is an interesting concept, because if it stores all the thoughts of the universe, do we really exist? Or are we just vessels, shells for those thoughts to swim around? and then if we ask that question, why do we even exist? Why do our bodies exist? Why are we even here?
These are really, really deep questions that, I mean, it's definitely interesting to have them.
Yes.
But this is, yes, but this is also like the part where sometimes it's easy to really get lost in it. These are so big questions. The scientists looking for it since ages. Everybody, all the mystics, all the gurus, all the monks, everybody, the whole world, the highly spiritual have always been asking this question. And somewhere along this line, it's just the fact of that there is something simple about it. That there is really just something simple about it without like putting too much intellectual and artificial spirituality in it. Okay.
I am attracted to that thought. Here I'm using thought again because I wanted to talk about thoughts again. I am attracted to the idea that rational thinking has its place, but it's also a hindrance, and it also creates the separation. There is something else that you said that it was like a hook into my rib cage when you said it. We were talking about movement in Kung Fu, and stepping outside. So you mentioned stepping. It's a way to help step outside of the mind and create a state of awareness. And you said what we're trying to do is to replace coincidence.
Look, rational as a consequence can be something functional afterwards. It can be something beneficial. But it's still based, let's say, on it's still based on a differentiation of what you want. So the rational way of how to solve a problem, yeah, but on what is this rationality based? So maybe it's based on an outcome. So if you want to have a specific outcome, there is a rational way of how to achieve this outcome. But what if the outcome is not in our hands? Which means sometimes you walk through this lifetime, it doesn't matter what you have done. Sometimes you are encountering people that come into your life. You don't know why they show up. You don't know why exactly in this moment of time they have appeared in your lifetime. There is nothing rational about it, but there is a deep truth embedded in this. Meanwhile, is my personal feeling. You are never meeting somebody by coincidence in this lifetime, depending on what coincidence you understand, yeah? Everybody who appears in your lifetime, everybody that you're meeting, they are there for a reason. And maybe it's for you to figure out this riddle. What is it why is that person coming to your life? What is that lesson you are supposed to learn? Because this is what I think all of this is about. I said before, invest your lifetime in elevating the openness of the heart for you. This is the elevation. But how are you able to elevate? How do you know at which level of elevation you are finding yourself? Well, this needs to be tested. So what it means is, if you are still getting angry, if somebody like takes your cup of tea or takes your cup of coffee away, I mean, it's still far, far away from from being an elevated soul, from being an elevated being. If small things like this still bothering you. So that means could happen that more and more often it appears again and again that you are just dropping something, you are losing something, people take something from you away. It always triggers the same level of your elevation inside of you. Until you master it, until you have come to the conclusion, okay, it cannot be. Yeah, for the last 5 years, I'm exploding. Yeah, I'm getting super mad whenever somebody takes my cup of water. So how often will this repeat again until you learn the lesson? And when this happens, it's gone. But now something else comes. Now maybe you start having a relationship, but all the time you are confronted with jealousy. And then you just observe yourself what happens when you are acting upon jealousy. Well, mostly the outcome is not going to be one that, let's say, keeps the relationship alive on the long term. So if jealousy is a problem that you carry from one relationship to the next, and then one day you are wondering, why are you not able to keep up a relationship? Well, this is another type of challenge. It's another type that tries to trigger how much are you internally elevated, evolved? How much have you matured? Have you grown inside of yourself? So, and the amount of tests, the amount of challenges, I think they are innumerous. There are infinite ways how to test you. But one thing always stays the same. You need to find a way to overcome them.
I keep thinking, and I'm sorry I keep saying thinking, but maybe some of these thoughts are intrusive and maybe not. But in the last few minutes, I've been thinking about you as a young boy, young man, training, spending all of your hours training and building some kind of memory for yourself. And it seemed like that it's a good metaphor for building strength, so that you ready yourself for an upcoming tumultuous period. And after that period, gaining the experience and maturity to see that you need to settle, that it's not just the training. The training will bring you up to a point, but the settling of, I don't know if mind is the right word, but the settling of your being is what the goal is. Because I see you as you're a 40-year-old man who's gone through these life experiences, many different ones. But what stayed constant is your dedication to your training. But your dedication to your training the goal has changed as you've become more mature with your life experiences.
In the very beginning, for me, was important. I want to build up physically. I want to look good. I want to have my six pack. I want to have the muscles. I want to be able to kick high. I want to be able to punch hard. So I want to go into competition and measure myself with other fellow practitioners to see how skillful am I, how skillful is he. So of course, in the very beginning, it's based on physicality. It's based on superficial appearance. It's based on competitive mindset. This is how I started the journey. But then came one very, very essential point that for me changed a little bit my way of thinking. And that was when I, for the first time, encountered the saying, Shaolin. So this tradition, Shaolin, is Chan. So Chan. Shaolin is Chan. meaning Chan standing for Zen, meditation. So Shaolin is meditation. Shaolin is not Chuan, Quan. Well, now just for the people. So what is Quan? It's the fist. Yeah. So if you practice Shaolin Chuan, the Shaolin fist, it refers to the practice of the martial arts, the fighting abilities. This is the Quan. But that sentence is Shaolin is Chan. Shaolin is not the fist. So literally meaning Shaolin is about meditation. It's not about fighting or building something up there purely superficially. So, but now I heard the sentence when I was like in my 14, 15, 16s. Yeah, meaning I was still young. I have a lot of energy. I want to also, like I said, compete with others. So it was hard for me to understand the depth of that one quote, of that one saying.
Right.
But now with 40, I can't tell you that that I solved the secret or that I really solved that question, but my understanding now is a different one. So there is a different depth. There's a different, there's a different understanding when I see that quote now again. So now it's just that I'm still having my physical practice, but not for the physical practice only. It just serves me on a daily basis as a tool to keep on elevating. But this elevation is not in regards to the body primarily. It's for the elevation of your spirit, your goodwill towards people around you. So this is also the reason why meanwhile, everything has become so public. It is so, how I see it is, I was a small kid, just interested, being enthusiastic about the Shaolin arts. And then one day somebody just started asking me, so, how do you make the punches? And so I started to express in my way, when I make a punch, what is it, everything that goes on in my mind, in my adjustment of the body, the adjustment of the skeleton, the tensioning or releasing of my muscles, let's say. And so my answer to how do you make a punch turned out to be a one-day presentation of philosophy, how to move the body.
Beautiful.
And this is how somehow everything went viral and people starting asking me more questions. But all of them, I have always just related them back to my martial art training, because I have not read too many books in my lifetime. So all the things that people say like, but that sounds like wise. Yeah, okay. I'm happy if it sounds wise, but it just comes from the practice. It just comes from because I do that martial art training.
In your practicing, have you ever left your body? You ever had an out-of-body experience?
As long as my body is moving a little bit upwards, or even the arm upwards, downwards, left, right, an out-of-the-body experience, I wouldn't call it at all. If there is something that I would regard as that feels very special, or meanwhile maybe is even normal, I don't know how to say. If you eat, you eat. If you talk, you talk. If you sleep, you sleep. If you make a movement, you make a movement. This is the way of life. Nowadays, the problem is you talk, you think about eating. You are eating, you think about sleeping. You're sleeping, you think about moving. You're moving, you think about reading. Okay? So for me, it's not, I don't want to be out of the body. The thing is, I don't want to be unaligned. This is what I don't want to be. Everything about me, my emphasis is I want it to be aligned. What I feel is what I say, is what I think, is what I do, is what I act upon. It's one way. It's not two options. And in the same way, so what is like a very special moment? It is when no matter what you're doing, you just do. It's one. You're not thinking about what you're doing. What you think is what you do. It's one. It is synchronized as one. And this is what I think year-long martial art practice is doing, is training you, is displaying to you. It displays to you that there is a way how mind and body can unite to such a deep, deep level that it has nothing to do with thinking anymore. It's the pure expression of what you are. Yes, of what you are, not who you are, of what you are.
I like the word aligned, as you said. You don't want to be unaligned, and it feels like what you're saying, or I'm interpreting it this way because maybe I want to interpret it this way, that your alignment is really your activation. Like those two are the same. You are activated once you're aligned. As that thought came to me, I also went to something else that you said in another TED Talk, and you said this may be a little bit out of context, but whatever. I just typed it out on my phone as I was listening to it on YouTube. You said you don't want to waste your lifetime on unnecessary things. In case you come back, you're going to face those issues you didn't solve in this lifetime. Is your goal for alignment also a preparation for after you leave your body? Are you doing it as an investment for after your body dies?
So, to that second question, it's definitely yes. Why? I don't know how big everything is. I don't know how big everything is. I know it's big. It is bigger than a human being is even able to grasp. So this is the bottom line. Okay. This is also at the same time, it is my motivation. It is what gives me energy. It is what gives me hope. It is what gives me inspiration. It is what makes me believe that this is a miracle that we are living in. That is like that initial thought. Okay. But to come back, because sometimes people say, or maybe they have the impression that, yeah, but this is like spiritual talking. I mean, coming back after a lifetime. I have my problems right now. Yeah, I'm hungry right now. What the hell should I care about what happens after I die in 80 years? So, but that's saying what we just mentioned before. Meaning, if you don't solve your issues in this lifetime, and in case you would come back, what I said is, well, you're just going to come back having the same issues again. But now we boil it down into we don't have to wait 80 years for this to happen. It happens every 24 hours and every 365 days. Meaning, all the problems you had on 31st of December, 2023, before New Year's Eve, all the problems that you had on that day, if you haven't solved them on that day, even if you wake up being drunk after the New Year's party, if you wake up on the 1st January 2024, they're still there. The problems from last year are still there. There is only one way how you can start into your next life, how you can start into your next day, how you can start into your next life without the past problems. And that one is solve every problem now. Now. That's the only way. What I don't solve now, 10 minutes later, I still have it. Now the thing is, and I'm not talking about the type of problems like the financial department has written a letter that they're gonna come. Not this type of problems. I talk about the internal conflicts that you carry around. The internal human-made by yourself problems. This is what I talk about, that you are carrying it on. Yes, because it is a part of you. So if you want to live in paradise, that means you have to become already right now the paradise. If you can't find the paradise inside of yourself, you're not going to find it tomorrow.
That same talk you gave the story about the arrow, which is, I think, exemplifies exactly what you've just said. About the first arrow always hits, but make sure the second arrow doesn't hit, because oftentimes the second arrow is the one you're shooting at yourself.
So that first part, for example, is that first arrow. It also literally is the fact of you walk through this lifetime, you will encounter things that in the first moment are going to hurt you. It's going to happen to all of us. But now the question is, after this event has occurred, after something like this has happened, how are you going to cope with it now afterwards? And this is the point where many people are then still dwelling in the past, carrying the suffering and the pain from that event still with them. Even if a month has passed, a year has passed, 10 years have passed, it's still there. This is the literal example for remaining too much still in the past. Yeah. And this is the second arrow, for example.
Shifu, this has been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate the wisdom. I could go on and on with you, but I did promise you about an hour. I want to leave just with one last question to you that we ask all our guests: is what is greatness to you?
Number one, you figure out your own personal way how to ensure that you are starting to love this life, to appreciate the time that has been given to you, to enjoy actually what you yourself are doing. That is the number one of greatness. And then after you have discovered that this is the way that you, first of all, liberate yourself to fully enjoy what chances have been given to you in living this existence. This is number one. And then the second one is spread the message that other people discover the same. I think there's nothing bigger in this world there's nothing bigger, more sustainable, more purposeful, more peaceful, more heart fulfilling than these two things. You are feeling good living this life, and you make other people feel also good to live their life. And so at the end, everybody feels good living their life, problem solved. That's the greatness.
Shifu, the messages you've given in this last hour or so are well taken. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for spending the time with us. It's been wonderful. Thanks again.
Luciano, thank you also very much for this invitation. And so for the future, depending on how your audience likes this type of podcast, you will let me know afterwards. So that means it's not a problem. When the time has come, when the people ask for it, when the time is right, always a possibility we talk again. So no problem.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Hey, it's Enrico Colantoni here, actor, director, and dedicated napper. Like what you heard today, there's more to come. Make sure to subscribe to Behind Greatness and learn about our live events at inspirenorth.com. You'll also find links to our social media right on our website, so be sure to give us a like and follow. Until next time, stay inspired.